How does all of this sort of resonate in the legal community when they see what's happening and they know daggone well, to use my daddy's expression, that that is not the way this should be done?
I mean, this is the classic erosion of the rule of law, right? Rule of law, people say, what the heck does that mean? System of law is that the governed and the government agree to abide by. That would be the Constitution here, right? Transparency in the way it's enforced so it's predictable and stable. Well, maybe there's transparency because he's very open about what he's doing, but that's not predictability and stability, right, in even-handed enforcement. Fair system of adjudication with neutral and competent independent judges and lawyers. Well, he's, putting his closest allies like Emil Bove into judgeships. He's putting his chosen personal attorneys into the leadership of the Department of Justice. He's making sure attorneys who might oppose him will think twice about it vis-a-vis the blacklisting of law firms. This is all the degradation of the rule of law. And I would also add to that, I think he's emboldened by the immunity decision, which did say that a president has absolute core constitutional power over his Department of Justice, including with respect to sham investigations. The Supreme Court majority actually said sham investigations. Now, again, that was only about immunity from criminal prosecution for the president, but the whole majority opinion just aggrandized the office of the executive over the other branches and, I think has served ever since it was issued as a real emboldening foundation to some of what he's been doing.
Lisa, you noticed something in your reporting.
Well, the indictment is up now. And so if I think it's important to read from it that the two counts, Alicia, that we see in this indictment against Jim Comey, the first count is a false statements charge under 18 U.S.C. 1001. That's the typical statute used when somebody is charged with making a false statement to Congress. It's the statute that was used, for example, when Roger Stone was criminally charged. And the second is obstruction of a congressional proceeding. That's 18 U.S.C. 1505. And I want to point out to you and our viewers that if that statute sounds familiar, it's because it was one of those that was most frequently used against those who obstructed a particular congressional proceeding, the one that took place on January 6th, 2021. And so this is not what we would call a speaking indictment. It's a two-page recitation. It is signed by Lindsay Halligan alone as the United States attorney, and the docket sheet for this matter only lists a single prosecutor. Christy can tell you from her own experience how atypical that is. I don't recall seeing a lot of docket sheets that had Preet Bharara's name on it when I followed matters in the Southern District or when I appeared in matters of the Southern District. Lindsay Halligan is the only prosecutor whose name is listed. Jim Comey is also listed as having an attorney who is from a firm called Carmichael, Ellis and Block. And I don't know whether that person will continue to represent him. But what I was going to say before this indictment came in is we have some reporting from NBC News, which was in the courtroom as the indictment came down, that the judge who received the indictment was confused because there were two charging instruments. And she basically said to Lindsay Halligan, which of these is your charging instrument? And she said, well, I didn't see them. And she said, they both have your signature on it. And then she asked Lindsay Halligan to come up to the well of the courtroom and to make a handwritten change on one of the documents. It was during that exchange that it also became obvious that there was a third count, or really it was count one of the indictment, on which these grand jurors did not concur, and therefore they returned no true bill on a third count. But that speaks to how fish out of water Lindsay Halligan, who has a background as an insurance lawyer, is here. Christy mentioned she is on her fourth day on the job, but she didn't even know that she had signed two duplicate versions of the same charging instrument, and the judge seemed to be sort of perplexed by that.
The My Cousin Vinny vibes would be funny were we not talking about the degradation of our democracy. I mean, have you ever seen anything like this?
I mean, I don't know that she knows what a charging it. Does she know what an indictment is? Like, these are kind of basic, kind of when you're a baby prosecutor, you learn kind of what all of these things are and how just basic things work in a magistrate court of returning an indictment. Again, not only is she an insurance lawyer, but she barely has any experience in federal court. I believe she has a few federal cases that she's on, signed as a party for, and most of them were either dismissed or ended in losses. Like this idea when they announced her that she has, a track record of success, where would that be? Where would we find that? Because I certainly haven't seen it, not in federal court anyway.
Can I continue for 1 second?
Very quickly.
Yeah, I just want to say that the particular thing that James Comey is alleged to have falsified is that he said at the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on September 30th, 2020, that he did not authorize a person identified as Person 3 to serve as an anonymous source in news reports regarding an FBI investigation concerning Person 1. I expect that Person 1 would be perhaps Michael Flynn. It's not clear, but this is what the false statement is supposed to be. And with respect to the obstruction, they just say that he corruptly endeavored to influence, obstruct, and impede the due and proper exercise of proper inquiry by making false and misleading statements, and they don't go on to specify what those false and misleading statements are.